שחסרת בי נשמעתי בחמלה רבה אמונתך מודה אני לפניך רוח חי וקיים מודה אני לפניך רוח חי For thanks to you, ever-living sovereign, that you have restored my soul to me in mercy. How great is your trust. And as we start our day, and we express our gratitude for our souls, we express our gratitude for being who we are, having also the opportunity to live up to become our best selves, Rabba emunatecha, how great is to have God's trust. As we enter this sanctuary, I invite you to turn your Sidurim to page 192. אשתחווה לך על קודשך וילתך, אדוני אהבתי מהום ביתך, ומקום משכן כבודך, ואני אשתחווה ואכרע, אברך לפני אדוני יוסי, בני תפילתי לך, אדוני את רצון, אלוהים ברוב חסדך, ענני באמת אישך. I invite you to turn your Sidurim to page 194. We take a moment to think of our bodies. In our tradition, as we will read in a few more minutes in Parashat Bereshit, the connection between body and soul is absolute, at least for as far as we are alive. And so we try to pay loving attention to our bodies. We try to dedicate efforts and care to our sometimes forgotten bodies, because our bodies are sacred. They are the vessels of our neshamot, of our souls. You can follow the words of the Sidur on page 194, or alternatively, take a moment for personal meditation to think about your body and maybe some part of your body that needs special attention in this morning of Shabbat. ברוך אתה אדוני רופא כל בשר ומפליא לעשות. We now turn our Sidurim to page 196 for the blessing for our souls. all creation, sovereign of all souls, praise are you, Adonai, in whose hand is every living soul and the breath of humankind. Baruch atah Adonai, asher beyado nefesh kol chai, beruach kol basar ish. We turn our Siurim to page 198 for the blessings for the daily miracles, Birkot HaShachar. I invite you to think, as we are following the words of our tradition, to think about the blessings that you encounter in your daily routine, the blessings that you have in your life, the things that we might take for granted, and they are not granted. Starting by our bodies, went all the way to our ability to choose. You know, let's take a moment to talk about Birkot HaShachar. It happens to me almost every time that we are thinking of the Birkot HaShachar and something strikes me. And the reason for that is because the blessings for the daily miracles, the Birkot HaShachar, they encompass so many things in our tradition. They go from the very simple things that we do with our bodies, and also the additional layers of the things that we do with our bodies. When we say Lavchin ben yom ben laila, the ability to distinguish day from night, is not only the ability to distinguish day from night, which is important, it's the ability to connect with time and recognize time and be mindful of time. When we say, "Who has made me free," it's not only about freedom, it's about free will. And we chant that exactly in that way, it's free will, and that's the beginning of our Torah. The story of human beings being able to make choices and being accountable, and also being enriched by their choices. So as we daven the blessings for the daily miracles, I invite you to think of any of them or all of them and try to connect with the different layers of our tradition and also of your life as we search, look for gratitude. Page 198.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who opens the eyes of the blind.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who frees the captive.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who lifts up the fallen.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who stretches the earth over the water.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who strengthens our steps.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who clothes the naked.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who gives strength to the weary.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who removes sleep from our eyes, slumber from our eyelids.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me in the image of God.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me free.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Israel, who has made me a Jew.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, עוזר ישראל בגבורה.
There's Israel with strength. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Israel betifara, who crowns Israel with splendor. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshalo b'mitzvotav, betzivanu lasok b'divrei Torah. O Adonai our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths, and the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people Israel may know you, by studying your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu המלמד תורה לעמו ישראל. We're on page 206.
אלו דברים שאין להם שיעור, שאדם אוכל פירותיהם בעולם הזה, והקרן קיימת לו לעולם הבא. ואלו הן כיבוד אב ואם וגמילות חסדים, והשכמת בית המדרש, שחרית וערבית, והכנסת אורחים וביקור חולים, והכנסת כלה ולוויית המת, ועיון תפילה, והבאת שלום בין אדם לחברו, ותלמוד תורה כנגד כולם.
We turn our study to page 212 for the blessing for the Psukei de Simbra, the section of our service in which we try to intentionally uplift our minds, our souls. Source of life in the universe. One God, life of the universe, praise and glorious ruler. Your name is eternal. Melech me'olam, batishvachot. Melech me'olam, batishvachot. Baruch atah Adonai. Melech me'olam, batishvachot. Start the Psukei de Simbra in Shabbos with Psalm 92, Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat. There's a melody that we have done several times, but actually it's a melody that opens Psalm 92, and it's quite simple. So let's learn this together, whether you are connecting with us online or you are here in person. Mizmor Shir,
Mizmor Shir,
Mizmor Shir,
Mizmor Shir,
Leyom HaShabbat. No, mistake. Leyom HaShabbat. והללו חסדה. תהילת לדוד, תרוממך אלוהי המלך, ביברך שמך לעולם ועד.
בכל יום אברכך, והללה שמך לעולם ועד.
גדול אדוני ומהולל מאוד, בגדולתו אין חקר.
דור לדור ישבח מעשיך, וגבורותיך יגידו.
הדר כבוד הודיך ודברי נפלאותיך עשיך.
וזוז נורותיך יאמרו, וגדולתך אספרנה.
זכר רטובך יביאו, בצדקתך ירננו.
חנון ורחום אדוני, ערך אפיים וגדל חסד.
טוב אדוני לכל, ברחמיו על כל מעשיו.
יודוך אדוני כל מעשיך, וחסידיך יברכוך.
כבוד מלכותך יאמרו, בגבורתך ידברו.
להודיע לבני אדם גבורותיו, וכבוד ענן מלכותו.
מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור.
סומך אדוני לכל הנופלים, וזוקף לכל הכפופים.
עיני כל אליך ישברו, ואתה נותן להם את אוכלם בעתו.
פותח את ידיך, ומשביע לכל חי רצון.
צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו, וחסיד בכל מעשיו.
קרוב אדוני לכל קוראיו, לכל אשר יקראוהו באמת.
רצון ירב יעשה, בית שבתם ישמע ויושיעם.
שומר אדוני את כל אוהביו, ואת כל הרשעים ישמיד.
תהילת אדוני ידבר פי, ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד. ואנחנו נברך מעתה ועד עולם. Hallelujah. We turn our Sidurim now to page 218 for Psalm 150. Hallelujah, El Bekocho, Hallelujah, Birkia Uso, Hallelujah, Iburotav, Hallelujah, Kelopuno, Kol HaNeshama Hallelujah, 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 Kol HaNeshama Hallelujah, 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 Teka Shofar, Hallelujah, Bemer Bechino, Hallelujah, Betov Umavot, Hallelujah, Bemilim Beudot, Kol HaNeshama Hallelujah, 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 Kol HaNeshama Hallelujah, כל הנשמה הללויה, 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 כל הנשמה הללויה, 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 נשמת כל חי תברך את שמך, אדוני אלוהינו ברוח כל בשר תפארת תתרומם, זכרך מלכנו תמיד. מן העולם ועד עולם אתה אל, אלנו מלך אלא אתה. God of the first and the last, God of all creatures, Master of all generations, who is praised in a multitude of praises, who guides the world with abundant loving kindness, and all creatures with mercy. Adonai neither slumbers nor sleeps. God awakens the sleeping, arouses those who slumber, gives speech to the mute. And God loosens the bonds of captives. God supports the fallen and strengthens those who are bent over. You alone do we acknowledge. Return our Sidurim to page 220. Ilufinu Maleshira Kayam. Even if our mouths were full of song as the sea, we could never find the words to express the depths of our gratitude.
אילופינו בראשית הקיים ולשוננו ננם וידינו פרוסות כנשרי שמיים ורגלינו קלות כאיילות. אילופינו בראשית הקיים ולשוננו ננם וידינו פרוסות
כנשרי שמיים ורגלינו קלות כאיילות. אין אנחנו מספיקים להודות לך ולברך את שמך מלכנו. אין אנחנו מספיקים להודות לך ולברך את שמך מלך מלכי המלכים, מלך מלכי המלכים, מלך מלכי המלכים. בשירת הים ולשוננו ננם ועינינו פרוסות כנשרי שמיים ורגלינו קלות כאיילות. מלא שירת הים ולשוננו ננם ועינינו פרוסות כנשרי שמיים ורגלינו קלות כאיילות. For every mouth will acknowledge you, and every tongue pledge homage to you. Every knee bend in your presence. Every upright person shall bow before you. Every heart will revere you, and every inmost thought will sing to your name. And David said, let all my bones exclaim, who is like you, O Adonai? Bless Adonai, O my soul, and let my inner being praise your holy name. Page 222. שוכן עד מרום בקדוש שמו, בכתוב רנו צדיקים באדוני, לישרים נבע תהילה, בפי שרים תתהלל, ובדברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש, ובמקהלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל, הרינה יתפאר שמך מלכנו, בכל דור ודור. ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, האל המלך הגדול, והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ. כי לך נאה, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו, שיושבח הלל ושמרה, עוז וממשלה, נצח גדולה וגבורה, תהילה ותפארת, קדושה ומלכות, ברכות והודאות, מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול ותשבחות, אל ההודאות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי שמרה, המלך אל חי העולמים. Page 224.
יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה, מעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחי יכול וביום יכול, ובחיי לכל בית ישראל. מעגלה ובזמן חריף אמרו אמן. יהא שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולם ועלמא.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, יוצר אור ובורא חושך, עושה שלום ובורא את הכל. Praise are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. המאיר לארץ ולערים, עליה ברחמים. המאיר לארץ ולערים, עליה ברחמים. ובטובו מחדש בכל יום תמיד, מעשה בראשית. מה רבו מעשיך אדוני כולם, בחוכמה עשית. מלוא הארץ קנייניך, קנייניך חדש, אור חדש, ציון תהיר, ונזכה כולנו מלעלה אורו. אדוני יוצר המאורות. אהבה אהבתנו אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ויתרה חמלת עלינו. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. בעינינו בתורתך, מדבק ליבנו למצוותיך, מייחד לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah. Focus our minds on your mitzvot. Give us focus. Let us find the ability to focus, to discern between the Ikar and the Tafel, between what's important and what's irrelevant. Guide us in peace from the four corners of the earth and lead us upright to our land. For you, O God, work wonders, you chose us. Truly, you drew us near to your great name that we might acknowledge you, declaring you one in love. Praise be you, Adonai, who chooses your people Israel in love. Baruch atah Adonai, הבוחר בעמו ישראל, באהבה. We're on page 232. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברתם בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Page 236. Adonai said to Moses as follows, Speak to the Israelite people and instruct them to make for themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout the ages. Let them attach a cord of blue to the fringe at each corner. That shall be your fringe. Look at it, and recall all the commandments of Adonai, and observe them, so that you do not follow your heart and eyes in your lustful urge. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת אמת ביציב ואוף וחביב בן נורא ואדיר בטוב ביפה הדבר עשה עלינו לעולם ועד אמת אלוהי עולם מלכנו צור יעקב מגן אישנו דור בדור הוא קיים ושמו קיים בכיסאו נחום ומלכתו במונתו להט קיימת. God ever humbles the proud, raises the lowly, frees the imprisoned, redeems the afflicted, helps the oppressed, answering our people when we are in prison and when we cry out. Praise to God the Most High. Blesses God and deserving of blessing. In great joy, Moshe, Miriam, and all Israel sang to you together, lifting their voices. Who is like you, O God? Mi chamocha, Bailim Adonai. We're on page 240. שיפקו גאולים לשמך על שפת הים יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ויאמרו לאדוני ימלוך לעולם בעת כל ישראל ומעריצת ישראל עודנו מחייב לישראל קדוש ישראל ילאי 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 ברוך אתה אדוני גואל Israel. We turn our Sidurim to page 242 for Tfilat Amidah. Adonai, שפתי תפתח, גופי יגיד תהילתך. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו אלוהי אברהם אלוהי יצחק אלוהי יעקב אלוהי שרה אלוהי רבקה אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא אל עליון גומר חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסידי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו ואהבה מלך עושר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם. We are praying for rain already. מחלקל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ברופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, מנמנת על החיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמרגישים אותו בשמי מרום, הכתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא ספר ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, אלוה כל הארץ כבודו. אדיר אדינו אדוני אדוננו מדהים שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני במקומו. אחד אלוהינו ומלכנו, מושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ורחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם. אלוהי ציון לדור ודור, הללויה לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד תוד לך, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גוד לך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך, קדושתך נקדיש, בשבתך אלוהינו, מפינו לא יבוש, לעולם, לעולם ועד, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גוד לך, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גוד לך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך, קדושתך נקדיש, בשבתך אלוהינו, מפינו לא ימות, לעולם לעולם אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת, בקוראי עונג מקדשי שביעי, כולם יסבהו ויתענגו מטובך, השביעי רצית בו וקדשתו, חמדת ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה בראשית. אלוהינו אלוהינו. on page 258. Grant peace, goodness and blessing, grace, kindness and mercy, to us and to all your people Israel. Sim Shalom. Sim Shalom. Page 362, please rise as we start our Torah service. En kamocha ba'Elohim Adonai ve'en kema'asecha malchutecha
מלכות כל העמים
וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. לאדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך, אדוני עוש לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים. ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד, אחד, אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, גדול שמו, גדלו לאדוני איתי ונרוממה שמו יחדיו. מפיהם, מפיהם, יבורך כל ישראל. מפיהם, מפיהם, יבורך כל ישראל. מפיהם, מפיהם, יבורך כל ישראל. אין אדיר כאדוני, בן ברוך כבן אברהם, אין גדולה כתורה, אין חכמיה כישראל. מפיהם, מפיהם, יבורך כל ישראל. מפיהם, מפיהם, יבורך כל ישראל. אין אדור כאדוני, בן בתיק כבן אברהם, אין גדולה כתורה, בין חכמיה ישראל. מפיהם, מפיהם, יבורך כל ישראל. מפיהם, מפיהם, יבורך כל ישראל. אין טהור כאדוני, בן יחיד כבן אברהם, אין כבירה כתורה, אין למדיה כישראל. מפיהם, מפיהם, יבורך כל ישראל. מפיהם, יבורך כל ישראל. You may be seated. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Let me put this correctly. Can you hear me well? Yes, you can. That's such a nice thing. So, we are reading this week Parashat Bereshit, the first Torah portion of the entire Torah, the beginning of everything. Everything. And I must say that Parashat Bereshit is also, in my opinion, a sequence of statements. Sequence of statements regarding how to live our lives and how to navigate our existence in the universe. Now, it sounds kind of a very big idea. People sometimes ask, we have had this conversation many times, is the Torah a political text? Is the Torah a political text? What do you think? People say, no. Yeah, I want to tell you, I disagree with all of you. The Torah is absolutely a political text. It's not a partisan one, by any means. By any means. The Torah is too big to reduce that to the personal politics that we have. Sometimes we feel very connected to an idea and we feel very connected to that idea in the Torah. The Torah is not a partisan text, but a text that advocates for human dignity is a political text. A text that advocates for human integrity is a political text. And the Torah is a political text. All the Torah portions, and particularly in the book of Genesis, the book of Genesis, the first 3 Torah portions are Torah portions that are very politically oriented. I'll explain that in 1 second. And then it becomes a story about human imperfection and about family relationships. We'll be talking about that. Trying to set a very interesting bar that says, well, we are not perfect, certainly, and these characters are not supposed to be seen as heroes. You can see them as heroes, but they are not perfect. They have flaws all over. They make mistakes all the time, from the very beginning. Now, the first story, the human story of the Torah, going back to the idea of politics, is a story of defiance. Adam and Eve, they defy the authority of God. Now there is another question. The question is, did God want to be defied? Some people will say no. This person will say yes. I'll repeat myself, but I will say that again. When you put 2 naked teenagers in the middle of a garden and you say, that tree, don't touch it. Like, come on. Like, you didn't think they weren't going to touch it, right? On the other hand, and we'll talk about that in a moment, you can't create free will if the entity that you have created doesn't have the ability to defy your authority. We want our children also to defy the structures that we have created for them. There's the beautiful story in the Talmud, Lo Bashamayim, in which there's this discussion between rabbis, and they try to prove who is right regarding a legal idea, an halacha. And at some point, the voice of God, Batakol, comes from heaven and says, well, Torah is with this rabbi, like the law is with this rabbi, and then the other rabbis say, oh, once the Torah was given to us, it's for us to decide. You're not going to tell us. They're telling to God. And then the divine voice says, Nitzchuni banai nitzchuni. You have won, my children. You're right. The divine itself says, you're right. It's your decision. So I think that the idea of defiance is always there. And I want to extend that for 1 second. So the first story is the story of human dignity. And that's the idea of being created in the image of God, connected with the story of human responsibility and accountability for the administration of the world. The second story, we will read it next week, Noach ish tamim ledorotav. What's the story there? Well, the story there is the distinction between individual and society, and our ability to think on our own and to make our own decisions, even when there are social trends that seem to be inevitable. And the third one, the story of Abraham, Parashat Lech Lecha, 2 more weeks from today. But the third one is a story about one God, Lech Lecha, monotheism. Now, asks Rabbi Arthur Grimm, one God as opposed to 5 or 10, what's the difference? Who cares about the number? Well, that goes all the way back to this Torah portion. One God, which is a common denominator to every existence. So whenever you are facing any human being, you are supposed to recognize that one God. We all have, let's say the Talmud, we all have the same parents, so no one can say my father or my mother are greater than yours. And that's why modern thinkers don't only say monotheism as only one God, but they call it ethical monotheism. Judaism started an ethical movement. An ethical movement that recognized human dignity. And my friends, that was a revolution in that world. And guess what? In a world in which we are constantly facing hatred, I think it's still a revolutionary idea and a political statement to say that all human beings are equal and all human beings deserve to be treated with dignity. Okay, that was a side comment. Can we talk now about what I wanted to talk about? Okay, there is one sentence in the Torah, in this Torah portion that I find particularly interesting, which is, Lo tov Adam liot levado. It's not good for men to be alone. It's not good for Adam or for men, you could say, to be alone. Now, the question is, how are we together? So if it's not good to be alone, how can we come together? Now, says one of my childhood rabbis, Rabbi Manes Kogan, who is a rabbi in Brooklyn, says, a very interesting thing is that God created all the creatures and said that men and women are supposed to manage them, are supposed to, what's the word he uses? He says, dominate them. Dominate them. You're supposed to dominate them. The only creature that they are not supposed to dominate is each other. They are not supposed to dominate each other. They are not supposed to try to dominate fellow human beings. And says Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, we are supposed to try to dominate, if we are lucky, the self. Over 6 days, says Heschel, we are trying to dominate the world, at least the creatures of the world, hopefully not fellow human beings. On the 7th day in Shabbos, that is introduced to us in this very Torah portion, we try to dominate our souls. But then the rabbis say, actually, the reason we are created after all these animals is to tell us that flies were even created before us. So to give us some humility, to give us some balance, like everything was here before you arrived. So try to be careful, say the rabbis in Sanhedrin. Now, there's a pair created in the book of Genesis. The first chapter of the book of Genesis, Adam and Eve are created. Zachar v'nekeva bara otam. Chapter 1, verses 26, 27, 28. Now, in the second chapter of the book of Genesis, there's a woman created again, and this time from a rib. What happened? Well, apparently, the first relationship didn't work out. And she left. The Torah doesn't acknowledge that very openly, but the Midrash acknowledges it all over the place. Have you heard about Lilith? So the Midrash, the rabbis will say that the first one that was created was Lilith. And she didn't like her interaction with Adam. And so she quit. She left. That's a very... Now, the story of Lilith, as is told by the rabbis and later on by more modern Midrashim, by more modern, I mean from the 11th and 12th centuries, it's a story that is fascinating and for a very long conversation. But there is a strong statement by itself in the Torah, and it's that woman, two different women, or maybe the same, is created twice. Something didn't work out in the first try. Now the second try, the book of Genesis says, starts by saying, Vayomer Adonai Elohim lo tov iot Adam levado. The rabbis say that Adam was heartbroken after number one left. He felt very lonely, and he was complaining to God. And so God says, it's not good for Adam to be alone. And so he says, I will create Eser kenegdo. Now, this choice of words is a challenging one. Eser kenegdo. Eser means Ezra, help. Kenegdo is in front of him or against him. Now, the rabbis say, well, now the translation is usually, I will create him a helper. That's not what the Torah says. And I don't think that that's the intention. Now, the rabbis take it to two different places that I think are fascinating. Totally lost. My page just fell. That's why I'll find it. The rabbis take it to two different places in Yevamot. There is 63a. So in Yevamot, in the 63rd page of Talmud Yevamot, they speak about two different things. They say first, she can be of help to him. They can be helpful to each other if they succeed to interact well. But they also can be against each other if they don't know how to communicate. And so it's Eser kenegdo. You might be able to help each other, or you might be against each other. Your choice. But then they say, well, there are different roles. And each time that each of them fulfill a different role, the job of the other one, of the significant other, is to elevate and to complement the work of the other one. And then they become Eser, of Esra, of help to each other. And this is a very important idea, how we navigate our walk throughout the world, as trying to help each other, trying to complement each other, or we are against each other. If we are trying to gather allies, if we are trying to gather helpers, if we are trying to be of help, or we are trying to gather enemies. And here's the last thing. Now, and the question is, what's the real meaning of not being alone? There's a moment. Johnny, you mentioned this moment. It's one of my favorite stories or ideas in the story of the creation. Johnny mentioned that yesterday because when we studied together a few months ago in a class that was about female narratives in the Torah, I mentioned this story, and I think this is a very important story regarding who is in control. Adam and Eve are told not to eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge. And at the moment they eat, they will become knowledgeable. The first one who eats is Eve. So there is a moment in which she knows absolutely everything, and he doesn't know anything. She knows everything. She ate. All the knowledge is in her power. And I think that for that moment is the statement, it's not good for men and women to be alone. The loneliness of being the only one who knows. The loneliness of being the only one who understands. He doesn't know. She knows. And so she decides to share with him. And the two of them become knowledgeable. I hope that the book of Genesis and the reading of this new cycle of the Torah inspire us to be of help for each other and to share with each other and to build friendships and community. Because it is not good to be alone. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Guys?
So,
Good morning, everyone. We're starting Bereshit on, for those in the sanctuary, page 18, chapter 1, line 1. And we begin, Tamodna, Esther bat Basha bat Abraham v'Yaha, Sarah Leah bat Abraham v'Sarah, Leah Haroshana. First Aliyah will be Elaine Asa and Jane Beavis, and chanting First Aliyah will be Evan.
in the anniversary of his bar mitzvah.
Yes, Evan. Mazel tov.
Where's Bereshit? It's right there. It is.
At the beginning.
Ready? Okay. Yep.
Baruch et Adonai Hambarach.
ברוך אדוני ברוך לעולם ועד.
Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher Niharbanu Mikol Ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz ve'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu v'choshech al pnei tehom v'ruach Elohim mirahefet al pnei hamayim vayomer Elohim yehior vayehior vayar Elohim et haor ki tov, vayavdel Elohim et haor ben ahoshech, vayikra Elohim leor yom v'lahoshech kara laila, vayhi erev vayhi voker yom echad. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'hayei olam nata b'tohenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We now continue on line 6. Talmud, Ludmila, Cyril, Malacha, but Juri, Leah, Hasheni, and chanting today for the second Aliyah will be Miriam. That's
ברכו את אדוני המברך.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המברך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. ויאמר אלוהים יהי רקיע בתוך המים, ויהי מבדיל בין המים למים, ויעש אלוהים את הרקיע ויבדל בין המים אשר מתחת לרקיע ובין המים אשר מעל הרקיע, ויהי כן. ויקרא אלוהים לרקיע שמיים, ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום שני.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נוטה בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
We continue on line 9. Yamod, Aaron Moshe ben Abraham, the Rita, the Aliyah HaShlishit, third Aliyah, Mark Silverstein. And chanting will be Nitza.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach L'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam, Asher Bochar Banu Mikol Ha'amim, V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
אמן.
ויאמר אלוהים יקבעו המים מתחת השמיים אל מקום אחד, ותראה היבשה ויהי כן. ויקרא אלוהים ליבשה ארץ, ולמקווה המים קרא ימים. וירא אלוהים כי טוב. ויאמר אלוהים תדשא הארץ דשא עשב מזריע, זרע עץ פרי יעשה פרי למינו, אשר זרעו בו על הארץ. ויהי כן. ותוצא הארץ דשא עשב מזריע זרע ולמינהו, ועץ עושה פרי אשר זרעו בו למינהו. וירא אלוהים כי טוב.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam, asher natan lanu Torah b'torat emet, v'chayi olenu b'natan b'tokenu, Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen.
Let me find them.
And for the maftir, Yamod, Shimon Shlomo ben Yisrael, Tzvi Malka, Miriam Chana bat Ephraim Varivka, and that's Jeff and Stephanie Oslik, reading for the maftir. And the maftir for those in the sanctuary is on page 50, which is chapter 5, verse 5, is it, Miriam?
Yes.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai המבורך לעולם ועד.
Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
And chanting will be Mark Felowitz.
Thank you. Vayireh Adonai ki rabah ra'at hadam be'eretz v'chol yetzer v'choshvo libo rak ra kol hayom v'yinachem Adonai ki asa et hadam be'eretz v'yitatzev el libo v'yomer Adonai Emchet Hadam Asher Barati Ma'al B'nei Adama Me'adam Ad V'chama Ad Remesh V'yad Of Hashamayim Kein Nechamti Kein Asitim V'noach Matzah Chen B'nei Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
We say, stay here. Mishaberach, we acknowledge all those that need to go to the other side, actually. So let's talk for 1 second about the dynamics that got confused by of the motions in Torah. That got a bit confused by the pandemic. You come from the right side, you do your aliyah, go to left. And then there's another tradition, which is a very nice tradition, is that you don't go straight forward to your seat. You go around, you do an akafah. Now, if you can make it shorter, right? You can go around your seat, but there's a nice thing about taking it easy, and what you will see in many synagogues, particular traditional synagogues, the more traditional is not a good choice of words. In Orthodox synagogues, which they have sometimes big minyanim in Shabbat, it's a great opportunity to go around and say, good Shabbos to each other, like very silently. To all those that like to have long conversations during services, you can do that, but very silently. And you say good Shabbos to each other. We will acknowledge all those that came up to the Torah. We say, משברך אבותינו ואימותינו, אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, שרה רבקה, רחל ולאה. הוא יברך את כל אלה שעלו לתורה לכבוד התורה, לכבוד שבת, ולכבוד הקהילה האהובה שלנו. May God bless all those who came out to the Torah in honor of the Torah, God, the people of Israel, Shabbos, our community. May you receive God's blessing of protection, rescue from any trouble or distress, from any illness, minor or serious. And may God send blessing to all of you in all your endeavors, together with all Israel. And let us say, משברך אבותינו ואימותינו, אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, שרה רבקה, רחל ולאה, הוא יברך את החולים. May the one who blessed our ancestors will bless those who are ill. We think of those dealing with addictions. We think of those dealing with illness in their bodies. We think of those dealing with illness in their souls. We think of those in the very last chapters of their lives. We pray for them to feel at ease, to feel surrounded by love. As we bring their names into this space and we send them our prayers, I invite you to share the names of those you are thinking of. May the Holy One be filled with compassion for their health, to be revived, to be strengthened. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit, together with all Israel, and let us say, Amen. שתהיה להם רפואה שלמה והחלמה מהירה, a complete and a fast recovery. Please rise for Agva Anglelila. Adonai, and we will renew our days as of in days of old. We're on page 586. לבבך כי אדוני הוא האלוהים והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. Thank you, Steve. You may be seated. We now take a moment to acknowledge mourners among our community, where you are during the first 7 days of mourning, the first 30 days of mourning, the cycle of the first year of mourning, or if you have a yahrzeit this week, the anniversary of someone's passing by this time of the year in years past. We, of course, invite all our friends online to share the names of their beloved ones. We'll give you one more moment. As we turn our Sidurim to page 598 for Kaddish Avelim, Mourners Kaddish. Itgadal be'it kadash shemeh rava. Be'alma divra chilute. Be'amlich malchute. Bechayechon uvyomechon ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, באמרו אמן. יהא שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולמי אלמיה. יתברך, וישתבח, ויתפאר, ויתרומם, ויתנשא. ויתהדר, ויתעלה, ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה. תושבחתה ונחמתה. דא מירם ביעלמה, באמרו אמן. יהא שלמה רבה מן שמיה. בחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, באמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו. הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, באמרו אמן. May the memories of your dear ones be always a blessing. יהיה זכרם ברוך. You may be seated. Two announcements. So first, those that are here in person, I hope that you are staying for lunch with us. We are trying to retrieve the taste of coming together, of being together. So I think we have enough food for everyone. We got a very nice meal. So hopefully we can have an easy Shabbos lunch together. And those that are online, we hope that at some point, someday, you can join us for lunch. Let us know. So we will acknowledge you and celebrate your presence in person as well. And maybe at some point we start doing some online dinners or lunches. We'll think about that. We'll talk about that. If there is an interest, we're happy to develop that. Next week, on the 10th, Cantor Asi Schwartz is coming all the way from New York City. Cantor Schwartz is the cantor of Park Avenue Synagogue. Asi is an Israeli cantor. He studied in the cantorial school in Tel Aviv. He's without any doubt a wonderful, incredible singer, a fantastic tenor. And for those that haven't heard him, Google him, you'll see. And then don't miss the opportunity and RSVP as soon as possible. The tickets are free, and I want to tell you, I am very involved in bringing him. It's part of a work that we are doing with the Board of Rabbis and the Jewish Federation to bring cultural events to Orange County. So don't miss the opportunity. Have a good time. Have a nice and different Sunday afternoon. There's going to be a room to sit outdoors. There's also room to sit indoors, everybody with masks. Gabriel will be singing, and together with a few other cantors, a song with Cantor Schwartz. We are going to be recording a Hanukkah video. We're 2 months away. So we are going to be recording with him a Hanukkah video. I think it's a great opportunity for everybody to have a nice afternoon. And the reason this rabbi is insisting so much for you to come, not because we don't have enough people, but actually because I want to have my people there. And I think many activity members have RSVP'd already. So those that haven't, do yourself a favor and go. We will now conclude our service on page 628 with Igdal. I promised a few weeks ago that I was going at some point to tell you the story of how Igdal was developed, how this poem became a poem, and how it was born. I give you a preview of that, and we'll talk about that in a different opportunity. Igdal is built in the 13 principles of faith that Maimonides wrote. Now, why would a Jew write principles of faith? Any idea? That's not our thing. We are not a dogmatic religion. Who is a dogmatic religion? Christianity. So it was in context of interfaith conversation. Jews were trying to explain themselves. And so the different thinkers in different times tried to write principles of faith. And Rambam tried to describe the variety of ideas that Judaism might believe in. The interesting thing is, for those that study the Rambam, is that probably he believed the first four. All the rest, not sure that the Rambam believed. And the beautiful thing about converting them, transforming them into prayer, is that prayer doesn't limit us to say what we believe in. Actually, when you pray, when you're davening, you can extend your beliefs. You can say things, you can imagine things that you intellectually don't believe in them. Because prayer has that power and that opportunity in which invites us to extend our hearts and our minds to the level of our emotions and imagination. Page 628, Igdal. Igdal Elohim Chai, Meishtabach, Nimsa ve'en het, El Metzihuto, Nimsa ve'en het, El Metzihuto, Echad ve'en Yachid, כאיחודו נעלם וגם אין סוף, לאחדותו נעלם וגם אין סוף, לאחדותו אין לו דמות הגוף, ואינו גוף לא נערוך אליו, קדושתו לא נערוך אליו, קדושתו קדמון לכל דבר, אשר נברא ראשון בין ראשית לראשיתו, ראשון בין ראשית לראשיתו. ים ידה לי די 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 ידה לה לי די די ידה לה 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 לי די די ידה לי די 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 ים ידה לי די ידה לי די ידה לי די די ידה לה 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 לי די די ידה לי די די ריבון עולם
לכל נוצר יורה גדולתו ומלכותו יורה
גדולתו ומלכותו שפע נבואתו נתנו אל
אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו
לא קם בישראל כמו שעוד נביא ומביט את אמונתו נביא ומביט את אמונתו תורת אמת נתן לעמו על יד נביאו נאמן ביתו על יד נביאו נאמן ביתו לא יחליף האל ולא ימיר דתו לעולמים בצולתו לעולמים בצולתו צופה ויודע סתרנו מביט לסוף דבר בקדמותו מביט לסוף דבר בקדמותו דומה לאיש חסד כמפעלו נותן לרשע רע כרישתו נותן לרשע רע כרישתו ישלח לקץ ימים ועדות עולם כל חי ויש יכיר ישועתו כל חי ויש יכיר ישועתו חיי עולם נטע בתוכנו, ברוך הדיין, שם תהילתו, ברוך הדיין, שם תהילתו. אדוני עוש לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמיו בשלום. שבת שלום everyone. See the E.